has been meeting in someone itself, and
It knows that happened. The other kind, the kind that don't show up on a statement, that they add up the same way, interest compounding on a debt you didn't know you were paying. Her name is Catherine. We met at a firm networking event in 2019. She was sharp,
attractive.
wore confidence like it was tailored for her. Um, she came from old money, the kind that doesn't announce itself, but you notice it anyway. Good schools, good clothes, the kind of ease that comes from never having to worry about the small things, except Catherine worried. She worried constantly about slights, about disrespect, about people testing her.
I told myself it was endearing at first.
Vulnerability, real. She had a difficult relationship with her father, volatile, she called it.
Demanding he'd set impossible standards. I understood that. I made space for it.
I made excuses for it. Then I made it my job.
To manage it, the pattern started small. We'd be out somewhere, a restaurant, a bar, a grocery store, and she'd suddenly go rigid. She'd lean over and whisper that someone had looked at her wrong.
That a cashier had been rude.
And that a woman in the next booth
Was staring. That my tone was off, that my face showed I didn't have her back, that I needed to prove my loyalty.
The first time she asked me to confront someone,
That was at McGinty's on a Friday in 2020. A woman next to us at the bar. Catherine said she was glaring. I looked,
I saw nothing.
but Catherine's jaw was locked, and her eyes had that quality they got when she was building a case against someone in her mind. A prosecutor's eyes, I should have said no.
Instead, I said I'm sure it was just a coincidence.
That was the wrong answer. She didn't speak to me for 3 days. When she finally did, it was to explain that I didn't understand loyalty, that real partners defend each other.
That my assumption of positive intent
In Stranger showed I'd never really have her back.
that I was like everyone else, more concerned with being nice than with standing up for what mattered.
I apologized.
Um,
I told her I understood. I told her I'd be more aware next time. There was always a next time. The accusations expanded. My best friend Derek stopped coming around after she told him in front of me that he was undermining our relationship because he'd suggested we might want to consider couples therapy. My sister didn't get invited to my birthday dinner after Catherine swore she'd been smirking at her during a previous visit. My mother learned to keep conversations brief and surface level because any comment could be reframed as a slight. Catherine's version of events and the actual events existed in two different universes that she alone could navigate.
an accidental bump in a crowd became a deliberate test of my loyalty.
A neutral facial expression became hostility. A polite disagreement became betrayal. And I was always the translator. Always the one who had to choose support her interpretation or be added to the list of people who didn't truly love her.
The thing about being tested constantly is that you eventually fail, not because you're disloyal,
But because no one can live in that kind of psychological pressure cooker indefinitely without cracks forming. By year 4, I was documenting things not on purpose at first, just patterns, dates, the tone of her voice when she felt wrong, the way she never apologized, but instead explained why the other person should have known better. The way she'd rewrite conversations, not just once, but repeatedly until her version had solidified into fact in her mind. I found myself exhausted in a way that sleep doesn't fix. Here's what they don't teach you about betrayal.
the deepest ones don't always come from
infidelity or lies in the traditional sense.
Sometimes they come from someone who systematically rewrites the relationship roles whenever you're about to win.
Someone that positions loyalty as the highest good while making sure you can never actually achieve it.
someone who turns your kindness into weakness and your boundaries into abandonment.
What I learned too late is that you cannot fix someone else's internal measuring stick.
You cannot convince someone that the world is not against them if they built their entire identity around being wrong.
And trying to prove you're either complicit in their paranoia or complicit in your own erasure.
Real trust requires a minimum threshold.
The other person has to be willing to question their own interpretation of events sometimes. Has to be able to say, maybe I got that wrong. If they can't, you're not in a relationship. You're in a hostage situation where the hostage is also the hostage taker. The decision came in October of year 5. We were at a restaurant,
A nice one when I chose them carefully.
30 minutes into the meal, Catherine became convinced that our server had intentionally slow poured her wine in a disrespectful way. She demanded that I call the manager,
That I file a complaint.
that I show the table and the restaurant, that we didn't accept that kind of treatment. I looked at the server, young guy, maybe 23. He looked nervous. He'd been fine, better than fine, attentive, professional kind. And I said no. Catherine went quiet. The kind of quiet that precedes a storm.
I continued eating. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't explain or justify.
I just said, I'm not doing this anymore, not with this server, not with the strangers.
Not with my family, not with me. She stood up, made a scene, told the server and everyone in your shot that her partner didn't respect her and she was done. She was right about the last part. The legal separation took 2 months.
The financial disentanglement took 4. She fought every plea, not on merit, but on principle.
Because accepting any resolution meant accepting that she hadn't been right about everything.
Here's the payback, and it's important you understand the distinction. I didn't do anything to her. I simply stopped doing things for her.
I didn't defend false accusations.
I didn't validate rewritten conversations.
I didn't absorb her projections and call it love. I didn't try to manage her emotions or fix her childhood wounds or prove my loyalty through submission to her standards.
I documented everything.
Not to weaponize, but to protect myself.
Therapy notes, message threads.
Dates when incidents occurred and what actually happened. I gave copies to my lawyer. I gave nothing to mutual friends.
I let the evidence exist only as a shield.
When she tried to tell people I'd been emotionally distant, I had the conversation receipts. When she implied I'd never supported her, I had the documentation of every time I tried and the dates when I finally stopped.
When she called me disloyal, I simply didn't argue. I let my actual behavior with actual people in my actual life speak for itself.
That was the real payback, not revenge. Clarity.
Within 6 months, she was involved in a dispute with neighbors, then with a new partner, then with her yoga instructor. The pattern didn't change because the problem was never them. It was never the server or my sister or my friends or me.
The problem was inside her.
And I finally stopped trying to manage it.
I don't think about Catherine anymore. That's not cruelty. It's restoration.
I think about the 5 years I spent
As a loyalty proving apparatus instead of a person.
I think about what I accepted because I mistook her damage for depth.
I think about my sister.
And my friend Derek. And the relationships I had to rebuild because I let someone else's paranoia become my priority.
If you're reading this and you recognize yourself in this file, not as the betrayer,
But as the betrayed while still present, you need to understand something. Someone else's inability to trust is not your responsibility to fix.
and
Trying to will only teach them that they can break your boundaries and you'll apologize for the sound.
The exit
Is it dramatic? It's just an exit. You stop justifying, stop defending, stop performing loyalty for someone who's moved the goalposts. You document, you disengage, and you let them experience the natural consequences of their own pattern.
that's not betrayal. It's just finally showing up for yourself.
Case closed.